Welcome to the fourth video in our Design Thinking for SnapEd series. My name is Lindsay from the Fork team. This fourth video is designed to help you explore how to use data for driving your prototyping process. Data in the design thinking context may feel very different from what you're used to in more traditional public health approaches. And this video will walk you through how to consider data collection and data analysis in relation to your prototyping process. This video also includes more information about resources for further learning and where to find answers to some frequently asked questions. SnapEd is very accustomed to collecting and learning from data to assess the effectiveness and impact of our work. However, data collection and analyzation during prototyping seeks to answer two different types of main questions. One, are we even on the right track? And two, is our gut right about this? This is a place to actually define and test out the assumptions around feasibility and desirability that we're making as we're designing this intervention. This phase is all about bringing together everything you've learned so far in a series of experiments to make decisions about the design and delivery of your intervention. Using data and design thinking methods, particularly in prototyping, differs in three key ways from more traditional data collection principles. First, we're setting our measures of success a priori, or before we even start. In this way, we can define the minimum level of success, what we're going to be calling a threshold goal, that we're going to need to continue with another cycle of learning. It's important to engage your implementation partners in defining these a priori measures. What would they need to see before investing more time, money, or space, particularly in a setting like the food retail environment where these things are at a premium? Second, we want to learn quickly, so the type of data and the amount of data must allow for quick collection and analysis. For example, what are existing data sources that might help you answer some of these a priori questions? Is there a website or some place to find sales records? Could you spend an hour at a store asking folks one or two quick questions about their shopping habits or purchases? A mix of quantitative and qualitative measures is going to be helpful here. And lastly, we don't need to worry about sample size. Again, how might you check in with, say, 5 to 15 users, people from your target audience, to get their feedback quickly? Small sample sizes in the design thinking world help you move quickly through the prototyping process, and it keeps data collection and analysis manageable for your team. It also allows you to adapt and adjust your prototypes rapidly to get more feedback in a shorter time frame. So now that you have some ideas about the types of data and the process for collecting data, let's think a little bit about how you can use the data, the answers, the feedback that you receive to move this project forward. The feedback that you receive from members of your primary audience and your implementation partners should really help you do three things. And the first is pretty straightforward. Did we achieve our predetermined threshold goal, that a priori goal that we just talked about? For example, for our case study, did at least 50% of the people who purchased our prototype meal box idea understand the steps of the recipe? Secondly, the data that you've collected can inform the next iteration of your prototype. Again, keeping in mind that every round of prototyping should still be quick and easy, fairly low cost, to keep the testing cycle going, you can think about questions like, what did members of your priority audience have to say about the recipe? Did they understand the instructions? Do they have the cooking skills necessary to complete the recipe as you've written it out? And finally, the data you receive on your prototype will help confirm or deny whether your assumptions were truly rooted in user experience and need, in the needs of your target audience, your community that you're working with. Maybe your recipe wasn't as simple to prepare as you thought. Or perhaps the recipe steps were confusing and that resulted in some less than favorable flavors. This is the kind of information that helps you plan for your next iteration and understand whether your underlying assumptions are accurate and relevant. So moving forward with our case study, we'll show you how we use this example to complete step 6 of the testing template, which is all about creating a data plan. At the top, you can see that we defined our threshold goal. Our team will feel confident that we are on the right track if 50% of customers who purchase a meal box and prepare the recipe say it's easy or very easy to understand the recipe steps. We picked two measures to assess this goal: the number of customers who purchased the meal box and the number of customers who understood the recipe steps. We also included an open-ended question box for ideas for improvement. As you can see, we set the threshold goal for the experiment and each measure, as well as made a plan of how we were going to collect that data and get the feedback. At the end of the prototype, we met our minimum requirements for trying again, and we can integrate the ideas for improvement into our next cycle of prototyping. Here are some key learnings from data as it relates to prototyping and design thinking and testing out your key assumptions. First, make sure you have a plan to integrate your findings. Getting feedback just for feedback's sake really isn't going to help advance your intervention forwards towards meeting an identified community need. When you're building your design thinking project team, way back like we discussed in our first couple of videos, you need to identify the person who's going to lead this work. And that person needs to be someone who's going to keep all of these questions around key assumptions, community need, and user feedback in mind as you go through the prototyping process. Likewise, you really need a plan for learning from the feedback that you receive. Using resources like our testing template can help you think through each of the elements and set yourself up for prototyping success. Next, make sure you map your data collection and analysis plan onto the key assumptions or key questions that you truly need answered before you can move your project forward. What's the most important to your primary audience, those folks who are actually going to be using your prototype? What's most important to your implementation partners? And also, what are key considerations that you need to keep at the forefront of your process in order to center equity in your work? These are the types of questions you started asking during the assumptions phase. You've developed a prototype to test, and now you're collecting some data to analyze and see if you're on the right track. Remember, the goal of data collection for your prototypes, we're gut checking here. Small sample sizes are okay. Rapid data collection is great. You're collecting this feedback for a purpose, to move your project forward in the best way possible to meet the needs and desires of your primary audience and your implementation partners. Data collection for design thinking purposes might look and feel different from what you've done in the past, but it serves an important purpose towards helping ensure that the intervention you're developing really is aligned with community wants and needs. So, when have you done enough data collection to move into piloting and scaling up your intervention? Knowing when you've collected enough data to move forward with scaling up your intervention implementation is always challenging. And the answer depends on both external factors, like your timeline, your personnel resources, your budget, as well as the data collection process itself. Think about moving towards initial implementation once you have tested each of your key assumptions and refined related key intervention elements. Make sure you've tested those core elements of your intervention in real-world settings and with real people. Take time to reflect thoughtfully on the data you've collected. Did you meet your pre-specified threshold measures, those a priori measures we talked about? Is there a real market for your idea? Does your data suggest that the intervention will be sustainable long after implementation is over? These are some questions to keep in mind when you're deciding when is it time to move from prototyping into full implementation. Now it's your turn. Here's an opportunity to reflect and take action. We invite you to take 5 minutes now to reflect on these questions and think about a key assumption that you want to test. Consider what a threshold goal would look like for this key assumption and who might you need to talk to in order to figure this out. Use step 6 of the testing template to help get this process started. If you want to, please pause the video now to complete that exercise. It should take you about 5 minutes. Welcome back. I hope that was a helpful exercise for you. As we wrap up our video series, we want to ground our work in the feedback and words from our own design thinking for food retail stakeholders. At the end of our co-creation sessions, stakeholders were excited to see their initial ideas take shape and ultimately inform the guide and the frameworks for the meal box and rewards program ideas that were generated by SNAP eligible caregivers. We know that the step of moving from ideas into action can really be scary and intimidating sometimes. But we hope that the process of working with your design team to prototype, learn, and refine helps you bring these ideas to life. Because the people we serve have lots of ideas about what would help them live healthy lives, let's make sure that we give this our best shot. And finally, as we stated in the first videos in this series, remember, this is an iterative, adaptive process. The goal of using these design thinking principles is to have strategies and tools for quick, easy, and cost-effective ways to test your design idea in real time with those folks for whom the intervention is designed to impact most. We encourage you to think through this process. Think about it as an ongoing process. Many times, one round of prototyping will be helpful, but perhaps not sufficient to help you refine your program to a level that is optimal for your unique community context. And in this way, design thinking really isn't linear. Throughout our own design thinking work with SNAP-eligible families, we've gone through multiple iterations of intervention elements and ideas to arrive at our final program and outcome. In some cases, we found ourselves moving in a direction that we never saw coming. And honestly, that's the beauty of design thinking. Sometimes you are surprised by what comes out of your work, but at the end of the day, once you've gone through your assumption, prototyping, and data analysis process, you find that you've arrived right where you need to be to meet the identified wants and needs of your community. Thank you for completing this series with us. If you have questions or you want to chat further, you can email us at designforsnaped@unc.edu. We have also developed a list of resources for further learning and some answers to frequently asked questions, which can be found alongside these videos. These resources are going to offer more opportunities to read and engage with design thinking terminology and approaches, and provide some examples of how design thinking can be applied in a variety of settings. We thank you for spending your time with us. I hope you found this content useful, and if you have questions, we'd love to be a resource for you. Thank you.